Back to Everquest, but this time we're on the server Teek, and I've made it to level 35. Unlike my previous videos on Project Quorum, Teek is hosted by Daybreak, and it's an official server. Teek specifically is a part of the Teek Tormax release of TLPs, or time-locked progression servers. Long story short, Daybreak releases a couple of new TLPs in a sort of yearly fashion. These are fresh start servers locked in Classic. Teek, however, is starting in Kunark, which is great because I think XRs are awesome. These servers also have some other rules, which are generally some kind of restriction on boxing. Boxing referring to someone playing multiple characters at the same time. A very popular thing in EverQuest because EverQuest doesn't require a great deal of effort to play a single character. So one person is able to control a couple with ease, or up to 20 or 30 of them if you use some software. It also has a little bit faster of experience gain than truly classic EverQuest, but slower than the live servers. And in the case of Teek, it has a random loot rule. This means that loot from rares and raids is randomized so that NPCs and raids of similar level and expansion can drop any of their loot. Kind of becomes a loot pinata, if you will. I've been craving EverQuest. It's a bit of an itch I get every now and then, and I just want to play the game. This happened to coincide with the upcoming Teek release, which is a bad thing for me in my schedule because it means I'm going to be playing a whole lot of EverQuest. Quorum, or rather Project Quorum, is a wonderful server. And I understand some people really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed it. I had some problems on the server. I had some problems playing my character, and the biggest problem I had, which may be a little strange, is that the server isn't technically an official server. That server can just stop at any point and I'll lose my character. That's a bit of a bummer and kind of rough to think about. But when it comes to Teek, I at least know that this is hosted by Daybreak. So at some point in time, my character is going to roll over either into a random live server, or it'll actually be live if it progresses all the way through the expansions. I was thinking about what I wanted to play, what I wanted to do. Usually on TLPs, I just level up ungilded, play with randoms, making random friends, but this time I really wanted to do something a bit different. Previous TLPs, I run into this issue where toxicity sort of runs rampant through the zones when trying to level or friend groups. I remember a time where our healer at the time refused to heal. This was in a group when I was on a previous, I can't remember which TLP, but I was playing a bard at the time again, and I was in the Ocean of Tears. We were on the island with the goblins, and I was pulling these goblins back. Our group leader was inviting people to the group, and he invited this tank. When the tank arrived, our healer started freaking out. Said he's not going to heal this guy because he's in this guild, whatever this guild was. He refused. He sat there. He left the group. In turn, the tank started bad-mouthing the healer. Everyone in the group started freaking out, calling everybody names. Then he left, but not before sending me a message saying, "Not you, you were great." That's weird. And I ran across these issues all the time. You come up into Guck, where people are just fighting tooth and nail for mobs, an insane amount of mage bot armies camping named creatures. Just leaves a bit of a bad taste in your mouth, you know? So this time I went and did a little bit of research, and I actually joined a guild before the server went live. Yes, I went to the EverQuest Discord, did a little looking around, a little bit of digging, and I came up with this guild called Chef's Kiss. This is a guild of absolutely wonderful, friendly people. They were a core group of people who have played on several of the TLPs over the years. They have a bit of system in place to sort of get through the different servers, and this time around they made their own guild. It's a very sort of casual setup, which fits my schedule, and my friends who happen to follow along with me. So our journey on Teek, it's about to begin. We've got a guild. I've settled on playing Bard. That just leaves not playing on Teek to play on Teek. I was as surprised as you may be to hear that. Apparently, if you get some achievements on a different server, they're claimable on Teek. So they dragged me along as a level 1 and got me a bunch of achievements, which was awful kind of them, I might add. And then we start our grand journey by not even being on Teek yet. I attended my first so-called raid without ever leveling up. I was just level 1. A few days before the server is about to start, I actually got a message from a friend, a buddy who has been out of the United States on a work trip. He said that he's actually coming back next in a couple of days. He was asking if we wanted to hang out, do some gaming, right? Well, that actually coincides with the release of Teek. This is perfect because I also convinced my significant other to play the game. Our journey on Teek truly begins with us all realizing our chosen characters and our races that we wanted to play are nowhere near each other. That's right. One is an Ixar monk, the other is a dark elf necromancer, along with my wood elf bard. Being my significant other and her necromancer are the newest to the game, never having played before, we agreed to head over to Nectulus Forest to level there. This was a pretty long journey for my friend the Ixar monk, but he had a shortcut. Everquest just released Personas. This system is similar to Final Fantasy XIV, in which your character can be multiple classes at once. The biggest difference being issues with reputation, class and race restrictions, which means you keep your name, your inventory, but you can change your race and your reputations. This means hot swap to a Dark Elf, kill yourself on an Ixar guard, and bam, you're in Dark Elf land. My journey was rather easy. Just have to catch a boat, walk over to the forest. Being a Wood Elf and a Bard makes it pretty easy. As far as server opening day, which I believe was on a Wednesday, we actually skipped that day. Worked out great for us because according to the forums and according to Discord, at a certain part in the night, it was about 4 to 5 hour long queue just to get on the server. Absolutely bonkers, ridiculous, and unacceptable. This is Everquest. All right? I understand that perhaps maybe the server was a little more popular than Daybreak may have anticipated, but this is Everquest. How in the world is there a 5-hour queue to get into a server to play Everquest, released in 1999? Crazy. Anyhow, the next day, we all met up. We were fighting in the Nectulus Forest outside of Neriak. This actually ended up being a little bit rough and sometimes a little bit frustrating because amongst our slaying of wolves and spiders and snakes, you'd come across a random level 10 skeleton that would come over and just take your face and just rub it into the dirt, bend you over backwards. So we ended up a bit of a struggle, but we managed to get to about level 5 right before the unthinkable happened. My friend, the Ixar monk, had his game crash while zoning. Yes. You may be wondering, what happens if your game crashes? Is there some sort of system in place like modern MMOs have where you're immediately accepted back onto the server? Oh, nope. This is Everquest, ran by Daybreak. You are met with a 5-hour queue to get into the game, and so ends our first night of Everquest. Made it to level 5, met with a crash and a 4-hour queue. Our second day of playing, we decided to try something a little bit different. Everyone on the server is following a sort of very specific leveling path, and anytime we come across the popular way, it's insanely overcamped. One night we tried Unrest, because that is a place where they say, hey, go to Unrest. It's a great place to level, right? There were 57 picks and just as many people sitting outside of the instance. There were so many people. And we formed a group, we joined a group, and we pick hopped for about 20 minutes. There's nothing open in this zone. Nothing anywhere. Not at any point. And then later on, when I'm much higher level, we went to Lower Guck and had a sort of similar issue with 49 picks. Absolutely bonkers insane. Anyhow, we hunted down some pumas in the Common Lands until we made it to about level 8. Then we headed over to Ixar Land to check out Kern's Tower. This proved to be fruitful because there were plenty of things alive. We ended up fighting in Kern's Tower all day. The upper floors, we had our first experience with random loot when we killed the Undead Crusader. This is actually the best part of the server. Rare creatures have random loot tables, so it's sort of a loot piñata every time you kill one. And not only is it a sort of loot piñata, but it seemed like when you kill a named, he drops 2 things, not just 1. So you get 2 random things. But sometimes that other random thing is something stupid, like a gem or a weird quest item. I understand that later on in the higher levels, that gem or that random quest item actually ends up being a epic piece for a random class. So it actually ends up being really cool. But for now, it was a little bit disappointing when you kill something and you get, oh, here's your gem and your fine steel dagger. Oh, cool. Where's my loot? While we were doing this piñata farming, someone actually came in the zone and asked an out of character about milk and cookies. We weren't really sure what that meant, but we ended up with, well, milk and cookies in our inventory, along with a buff, which I don't know what it is, where it came from, but it kept our mana and health near max. This was pretty cool because we were able to pull and kill anything without ever losing mana or health. We got so many levels that hunting down spells from my significant other's necromancer and my bard became a small mini game within the game itself. God forbid the spells be sold in a singular location, like perhaps my bard guild. No. They were everywhere, including in Erudin, while some of her spells were sold in Grob or Payneal. No big deal, but we decided to buy upwards of 10 levels ahead because of just how fast we were leveling when we actually got into a good spot. That's because this weekend was bonus EXP weekend because Memorial Day, Memorial Weekend, at least in America. The next day, we returned to Kern's Tower and headed down rather than up. Down to the basement where skeletons and mole men lived. We slaughtered these poor helpless moles and skeletons all day. It was pretty great because we didn't need a full party, and being we didn't really know what we were doing and not inviting people had a bit of a benefit. We ended up in a hallway opposite of another group pulling from these tiny little rooms absolutely crammed with undead, and sometimes there's a mole in there. We ended up killing a couple of undead here, but honestly, nothing really fancy ended up dropping. We're not even sure if they were names. They never conned as a rare creature. They were just a skeleton with a different name, and he dropped like a quest item. It wasn't that important. Also, the other weird part about Kern's Tower, anytime we used forage, we get vegetables. I don't know where these vegetables are coming from. This is an undead tower. No one's been here. But I absolutely loved leveling here. After Kern's Tower, we ran into an issue of not really knowing where to go next. Following the Everquest wiki, we saw a couple of places we wanted to check out, and that's kind of how we found ourselves in a place full of frogs. That being Upper Guck. Unknown to us at the time was the level range of Guck and how long we would actually be here. This was when we grouped with our first guildie and had our first sort of proper group. Like I said, the guys from Chef's Kiss have been absolutely wonderful. He was a rogue, and he sort of walked us, once we said we were new and we're not really sure what we're doing or where we're going, he kind of walked us through what the generally accepted loot rules are on the server, being that everybody needs on everything all the time, yada yada yada, which is weird as a person coming from another game into EverQuest. Everybody needing on everything is a little weird. I've never come across that before, but in EverQuest, apparently that's the way to go because I guess people are a bit greedy in this game. Just a little bit greedy. Anyhow, we ended up recruiting a Shadow Knight and a Shaman to come kill frogs with us. We ended up killing so fast that we cleared everything, including our nearby halls. There was, however, one small problem with our first camp, and that was the levels of the frogs dramatically jumped depending on which hall you went down. It almost seemed like the zone was sort of divided up into sections. And once you crossed a certain threshold, went down a ladder, up a ladder, down into a new room. Sometimes you'd come across some things that were really high level. We're talking 10 plus levels over the frogs in the previous hallway, which would make it unkillable for our group. Upper Guck and Kearns ended up being pretty wonderful camps to hang out in. Mostly because of the large level differences. We were able to move through different sections of each zone as we leveled, and it was pretty great. In the latter parts of our Upper Guck conquering, we ended up making a group with another guildie, a warrior tank by the name of Enkai. I think he was an Ixar. He remains to be one of the better tanks we've played with yet. There is a common problem, a theme, if you will, among the player base who plays Everquest, and that is they tend to AFK a lot or simply not pay attention. This is a bit weird coming from a player who normally plays more modern, more difficult MMOs where you have to sort of play the game. Come here and people are just so slow to react, not responsive, AFK. So it was such a breath of fresh air to have Enkai be such a wonderful tank. We ended up camping at the Shin Lord, which I guess is the sort of king of the frogs, maybe? I'm not really sure. Well, the Lord himself ended up being, I want to say, level 30. The rest of his area, specifically where we camped next to the fungus guys, wasn't. Definitely wasn't. So the XP actually slowed quite a bit. The Lord was hard to kill. Everything else was super easy. And that is how we found ourselves somewhere new. The Crypt of Dalnir. In Dalnir, we didn't actually do anything fancy. We know nothing about this zone. When we zoned in, there was an Ixar monk and a shaman. There were LFG. That guy said, hey man, I've never been here. And I was like, hey, we've never been here either. So we teamed up. And we sort of just picked a random chamber and just pulled things to us. It's pretty easy. There's these chorused monsters. There's these goo things, which are weird. And these sperm monsters. Don't really know how else to describe them. They just look like sperm with teeth. The only issue with Dalnir was just how many were in a room. My bard makes it pretty easy. I'm able to go into a room and lull the monsters and get a single pull out of the room. But it was very tedious and honestly slow. So I kind of talked it over with the group and I decided I'm not going to do that anymore. So I would just go into a room, pull the whole room, bring it back to the camp, and I would just CC everything except the thing they're fighting. And then they would just burn them down individually. This worked out great. Way faster, way less work on my part. I'll just keep everything CC'd, and we'll just pull whole rooms at a time. Other than we weren't really farming named creatures, and there were kind of a lot of people in Dalnir, there was only the one pick. Well, there were two picks, but our pick ended up collapsing into the main pick, which threw us into a respawned room, which was quite of a doozy. I wasn't recording at the time, but I want to say I must have been CCing like 6 monsters at once while they were fighting a couple others. It was insane. A lot of fun, and a lot of props to the people that we ended up grouping with there. After grinding in Dalnir all night, we ended up kind of debating on where to head next. We were level 33. We ran out to City of Mist, which is in the Emerald Jungle on Kunark, just to see if this is a place we could kind of hang out in, but it ended up being just a bit out of level. The biggest problem here is that the monsters were, while red, and our group was able to kill them handily, just a little bit too high for me to land my mez on them. So I wasn't able to CC if we got a double pull. And Lol would sometimes resist. So it was just a little bit out of our level range. We probably shouldn't have been there. But again, we're new players and we didn't know. That is how we ended up in Lower Guck. Lower Guck. More frogs. This is not EverQuest, where we battle epic dragons and quest forever. No. This is where we come to slay frogs. And when you're tired of slaying frogs, you slay undead frogs. Now, Lorguck was an absolutely tedious process. I wasn't joking earlier when I said there were 49 picks. I ended up messaging some people in LFG because we are 3 friends trying to play together. Joining a group, basically impossible. So anytime we are going to go to a place, this involves us making said group and going and finding a spot. Given there's 49 picks, that ends up being one heck of a problem. So I messaged a couple tanks, messaged some healers and another DPS. Eventually, I came up with a full group. They were all warned ahead of time that, hey, we don't have a spot yet, but we're going to look for a spot. We get there. This is where I start to get just a little bit annoyed with some of the rule sets on Everquest. So this server, completely random loot. And I understand, hey, we don't really want people to have full access to their own instance to be able to farm whatever they want to farm, whenever they want to farm, because that'll sort of impact the Everquest economy. I get it, but man, this is insane. All right, hear me out. As a group of friends trying to play together, we get to Lorguck. I invite a full group. Told this group, hey, we don't have a spot. We got to get a spot. We end up going to Lorguck, calling out a camp check. Everything's camp. There's 40 people in this one. There's 40 people in Lorguck. I don't think there's anything alive anywhere. Open up the pick window with /pick, and in those 49 picks, there must be 40 people in every single one of these. So we end up jumping picks. Call out a camp check. Hey, what's camped? Everything's camped. Okay. No, you can't just jump to another pick. Oh, no. There's a friggin' 5-minute timer. So us, full group, ready to go, formed up at the zone, sit there for 5 minutes. We did this 3 times, so this is like 15 minutes where we just sat there, right? Just sat there looking around. Well, eventually we caught a new pick opening up. So we sort of rushed down. We made it to the easiest camp. I think it's called Bedroom. There's just a big bed. And we ended up pulling there. This ended up being fine. Everything was about our level. It was great. But man, what a tedious process. This is a crazy system. This is a crazy system. I understand why the way it is in place. Why can't we just make our own instance? Why can't we just make our own? This is crazy. You can't expect a group to form up, go to the instance, and sit there for 30 minutes waiting on the pick timer just to swap to another instance to find out everything's... That is an absolutely bonkers system. Absolutely bonkers. Anyhow, Bedroom ended up being a great experience. I understand why people are in Lorguck. It's great XP. There's an issue, though. There are not enough mobs. Bedroom was great XP. Assassin Supplier Room, great XP. Hamlord, great XP. Frenzy, great XP. All of Lorguck's great XP. There are not enough mobs. We were pulling so fast that I think we could have done all of Bedroom, all of Assassin, and Supplier, plus some of the next area as our group. We were just pulling so fast. It actually got to the point where things were so competitive, we don't even bother splitting or lulling or anything. If you see something, pull it. Even if it's the whole dang room, we'll just CC it in camp because people were getting so aggressive. They were getting so aggressive at trying to pull things away from your camp just to get a little bit of XP. But the Assassin Supplier camp, we ended up actually killing 3 names there. I think Ritualist was one of them as well. So we had 3 loot pinatas. The group got a ton of loot. It was awesome. I even managed to snag a mask that lets me transform into a dark elf. That was pretty cool. Managed to get up to level 35, or maybe it's 36. I don't remember. Anyhow, Teek, it's been pretty awesome. The random loot is a great deal of fun. Even if there are sort of a couple of rotten apples in the bunch, just kind of bad-mouthing the server, bad-mouthing each other, or just whatever. I've also enjoyed Chef's Kiss. This guild is a great deal of fun. Bunch of wonderful people.